this is yours.
Did you already get it? Well, we're gonna have to do stuff.
I hope so.
Why is there so many?
Good afternoon, Banks County Middle School. My name is Atha Dalton, and I am so thrilled to be here with you today for Heritage Days. I haven't been able to participate for the last couple of years, so I'm back, and this time I've brought some of my friends, and we're going to hopefully teach you something you didn't know, show you some things, and get you involved in what we do on a regular basis. Now, all of my friends that are here, we all have regular jobs. But there's one thing that bonds us and keeps us in commonality with each other, and that's the fact that we love history and we love teaching history. But we teach history a little bit different than the way you learn it in your classroom. We actually put you in it, let you experience it, and as you can see, and as you will see later on, we're dressed for the parts. Now, we're going to kind of take a little trip. This is not exactly one particular time. We're going to kind of skip over a little bit with respect to what happened in this particular area. Now, your heritage is important to you. You wouldn't be here, obviously, but you're who you are because of your heritage. So when you start talking about history and heritage, don't poo-poo it off. Don't talk about, oh, that happened a long time ago. That doesn't affect me. It does affect you. You're who you are because of your heritage, and you're who you are because of your family, your mom's mom, your dad's dad. All of the people that came before you have made you uniquely who you are. So embrace that heritage and be proud of it and study it, because you never know. You might come from royalty, or you might come from somebody that's notorious, or who knows. So it's kind of fun to go back and find out where you came from. So now in this part of Georgia, this is North Georgia, and we love it, and we're just really proud to live here in this county. But at one time, would you believe that there was nothing here except woods and streams and deer and bear and animal, and there were very few people that lived here. Now we look around and we can go down the road and we can see Chick-fil-A and we can see McDonald's, Cracker Barrel, all these neat places, but those weren't here. Nothing was here. If you came into this state, you had to come in with some strength and some fortitude, because it was up to you to make your living. You had to find a place to live. You had to find shelter. You had to cut the trees down, notch the logs, and put it together to make sure that you had protection from the elements. And then you couldn't just run out and go to your local restaurant and get something to eat. Not only did you have to build your own house, you had to find your own food. So this area was inhabited mostly by Indians. There were a few white people that ventured in. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that happened. One of the things we're going to talk about, the early settlers that were here. I'm dressed today like a regular mountain woman, country woman. I'm not frou-froued up. Some of the things that you may have seen, you see the lovely ladies in their hoop skirts and their beautiful hats. Forget about that in this area. You were too busy trying to survive and not dress up so frou-frou if you lived here. This was a rough area. This was wilderness. This was Indian territory, so you had to be very careful. You had rivers to cross, streams to cross. You had a lot of heavy wood, so you had to be tough, and you had to be tenacious, and you had to be determined to make it. So I've got a friend here. His name is Mr. Brown, and he's going to talk to you about some early buckskinning.
One of the things that the first settlers adapted in this country was taking the German Jaeger rifle, which was a real heavy, short barrel, big caliber, and coming up with a Kentucky rifle. Now, this particular one is styled like they had before the Revolutionary War, with a wooden patch box. It's flintlock. Set a piece of rock in your hammer, put a little powder, your priming flask, pull it back, makes a spark, and that sets it off. And the reason why I have the this is a flash guard, so that when you shoot it, you have gases and sparks come out the side as well as out the muzzle. The way you loaded it, I guess I got kind of ahead of myself. The way you load it is take your powder and a powder measure. This one's made out of cow horn or deer horn. It holds 70 grains of powder. Pour the powder down the barrel, and you take a piece of cloth, put over the muzzle, and then get a ball. I've got this is in order to make reloading a bit faster, they take a patch, grease it, put a ball in it, and hold it up in a piece of wood. All you had to do is set the top on it over the wood, and then grab your short starter, screwdriver. Now you can see as much trouble as I'm having going through this. Now what if I was being attacked by an Indians or a bear or something? I'd be in trouble for sure. But you use a short starter to get the ball going down the barrel, and then take your ramrod and push it all the way down. Pack it in good. Well, now you can tell that a person is being attacked. They're in deep trouble if they have to use a flintlock rifle. Now the way they made these at the time was a gunsmith would make the barrel, and he would make the stock, and as well as making the lock. That's where the term lock, stock, and barrel came from. Later on in the Civil War era, they started they had people that specialized in just making a lock or the barrel or the stock, and then they put them all together. Now we've got a flintlock pistol, this Kentucky style, and as you can tell, sometimes they spark, sometimes they don't. You have to be real careful with the elements, because moisture, rain, and that sort of thing would get your powder wet, and it wouldn't shoot. Some of the other items that I have on here, this is a haversack, not a haversack, this is a possibles bag. But it's possible to carry just about anything in here. I have other than the short starter, I have a brush for cleaning out the brushing out in the pan, keep it clean. You got a flash hole right here, the small hole that goes in through where your powder charge is and makes it go off. It's a lot different than modern cartridges. This is a napping hammer where I can keep the flint sharp so that they'll spark, or you can use a screwdriver area to tighten it up, keep the splint in place. Now during the Revolutionary War, soldiers would march shoulder to shoulder out to within about 50 yards of each other, and they would fire. Now the muskets at the time didn't have sights on the front of it, but they believed that if you actually took aim, that was murder. Even if you were in war and in battle, that was murder if you actually took aim at the person you were shooting at. So they didn't have a rear sight on the musket, so they would just point, and most of the time they'd close their eyes and then fire. The clothes is made out of buckskin. This is deer skin, the way they would kill the deer and skin it, and then get the hair off of it, and they use the brains as part of the treatment of chemical out of the brain matter to tan the hide so that it would be soft. The reason for the fringe, I mean, it looks good on your buckskins, but the reason for it was that if you get out in the rain, the fringe help drain the water away from your clothes so they dry out faster. In the east, where you had a lot of woods and stuff, the fringe was shorter. Out west, where there's in the Great Plains and that sort of thing, the fringe on buckskins will be real long. So it's a difference in the style and the conditions, because if you had a long fringe, you're running through the woods with a bear chasing you, you'd get hung up. And then this is one of the most important pieces. Did anybody see the movie Patriot? Where they used the tomahawk. It was a quite popular piece to have. It was real handy for starting a fire, cutting a tree or whatever, and for self-defense. The movie was based on Francis Marion, who was known as the Swamp Fox, who kept the British at bay in South Carolina till the end of the Revolutionary War. Anyway, I'm going to introduce the next era. do have some cavalrymen here. The buckskinners, at the time, they got the name long knives. The Indians referred to them as a long knife. But it wasn't because they carried sabers, but because they carried generally, most everybody carried a butcher knife that's about that long. But I think Indian must have got mine, because all I could find was my short knife, or skinning knife. You ready?
Does anybody have any questions?
Oh yes. Do you have any questions? That's a good idea. Now the reason for the cloth, the piece of cloth, you put the round ball is smaller than the bore diameter, and the piece of cloth helps it to it closes the gap between the edge of the ball and the bore, and helps it to take the rifling, so that when you shoot it, this is a rifle. It's got grooves inside the barrel that gives a spin to the ball as it comes out. The difference between that and a musket was they were smooth bore, and he figured a soldier would have to shoot at least 60 rounds before he had time to stop and clean his rifle. So the smooth bore muskets were a larger caliber, generally 75, 76 caliber for a brown vest musket, and they loaded it. The ball was a lot smaller than it. It's more like a 70 caliber, so that you could load 50 or 60 times and fire without having to stop to clean your rifle, because the black powder is very corrosive and it builds up inside the barrel. If you get too bad, it's almost impossible to get the ball down the barrel. I know when I'm target shooting, about every 5th round I stop, clean my barrel, and then start over again. So does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Why do they close your eyes when they shoot the gun?
Well, because they thought it was murder. If you actually took aim at somebody and shot at them, and you hit them, they thought it was murder, even if you were in battle. And if you're in battle and you get killed, you don't want to be accused of, you don't want to have murdered somebody. Now that's during the Revolutionary War, the men with the Kentucky rifles were frowned on by the regular troops, because they felt like that they were actually taking aim at the enemy and firing at them, that they were murderers, whereas the regular troops were not. Anybody else? Yes.
Why do you have tassels?
The fringe.
Yeah, those.
This house of war it's nice decoration, isn't it? But it also helps keep the water draining off your clothes. So just about everything they did it in those days, they didn't have a lot of time to. They didn't have a lot of time. They didn't have a TV to watch, but everything that they did had to be specifically for a specific use. You have another question? Yes.
Can you fire the gun? Can you fire the
Can I?
gun?
Well, with it being at school, I didn't bring no powder. So, but it's kind of neat to watch it shoot, because you have a flame comes out the end of it about that far. This black powder burns real slow, and then you smoke. Then you have a flame that comes out the side of it. One time I was at a tournament, and this guy was shooting a flintlock, and the guy next to him hadn't covered up his powder horn, and when he fired, the wind blew a spark down into that powder horn. It blew up. But as soldiers, brown vest muskets had, all the soldiers' firearm muskets had a flash guard on it, so that because they stood shoulder to shoulder, and the idea was to get as big a volume of fire as you could. And if you're standing here and the guy's right here and his musket is that close to you, the flash guard keeps you from getting burned by the guy next to you. Any more questions? All right. I think Miss Atha is on her way back.
Thank you so much. That was great. Thanks for those excellent questions. All right, the next friends that I have are Mr. Young and Captain Marino, and they're going to come out and they're going to do some things with our volunteers, our studio audience. They're going to have you experiencing a little bit of what life was like in camp in 1861. Now, before the war started, there weren't a lot of organized armies here in the state, so when the war was called to arms, they had to throw a lot of people together really quick. They know more about it than I do, so I'm going to introduce Mr. Young and Captain Reno and let them do their thing. And then I'll tell you a little bit later why I dress like I am.
Thank you, Miss Lee. Good afternoon. Everybody good? As Miss Atha said, I'm Captain Jeff Reno. I'm with the 5th Georgia Volunteer Cavalry. We are a reenacting group, and I reenact the Civil War and also reenact Indian Wars, 1870s and 1880 Indian Wars. We're going to talk a little bit about the cavalry and Banks County. You know, like Miss Atha said, this was a frontier, really, all the way up through the 1850s and 1860s. But when the war began in 1861, the Confederacy was formed. 11 states. Georgia seceded from the Union, and we instantly began recruiting men from this area. Now, the Confederate cavalry was outnumbered, the Confederacy was outnumbered, but the Confederate cavalry was a lot different than the Federal cavalry. We were very ill-equipped, but we had an advantage because these men down in the southern states actually were very good horsemen. The Confederacy actually paid cavalrymen to bring their mounts with them. In the Federal Army, you were actually issued a horse. But the Confederacy actually paid the soldier $40 more a month to bring his horse. So he had his own horse with him. The horse he knew was trained. He was familiar with the horse, and he was also a good rider. The Confederate cavalry pretty much dominated the Federal cavalry for the first 2 years of the war, just because of that. Even though the Confederate cavalry was ill-equipped, they made up for that with their riding ability and their spirit. Now, Confederate cavalry was pretty much mirrored to the Federal cavalry. They used the same tactics and they used a lot of the same equipment. On the Confederate side, we depended a lot on captured arms and ammunition. So this is actually a Burnside's carbine that was a very popular carbine for the Federal Army. It was a breech loader. It was easier to load in the saddle than a muzzle loader, like Mike Brown just showed you. But the cavalrymen had carried two other weapons. The Napoleonic era, the primary cavalry weapon was the saber. You know why the saber was a primary weapon? Because first of all, the muzzle loaders and the pistols were very ineffective and sometimes they failed. This never ran out of ammunition. As long as you had a saber, you had the ability to fight. And imagine about 1,000 horses charging over at you with sabers, ready to attack you. The cavalrymen also carried a revolver. This is an actual revolver from the 1862 era. It's a Remington. It's a 36 caliber. It's not a cartridge gun, it's a percussion gun. So you had to load each individual cylinder with cap and ball, and then you would put a percussion cap similar to a cap pistol. You know, the 6-ring caps, you'd use those to actually ignite the powder.
These were carried often. All cavalrymen at least carried one revolver. I've got another revolver though, because they were so hard to load. Some cavalrymen carried an extra revolver, and this one is a replica, but it is a Griswold revolver, and this was made right here in the state of Georgia, down in Griswoldville, right near Macon, Georgia. They started manufacturing arms for the Confederate Army, and this is a replica of the Griswold. There was a arms manufacturer right here near here in Athens, Georgia, called the Cookin Brothers Arsenal. There was another manufacturer of pistols in Georgia called Spiller and Burr, and they made revolvers in Atlanta and in Macon. Now toward Gettysburg, the tide did kind of turn on the cavalry, and we actually trained the Federal Army how to fight us, and they dominated us at Gettysburg. Okay, enough talking. We're going to do a saber drill, a real quick saber drill. So I need 6 volunteers from students. Let me pick 6 out. Here's the looking guy. Yeah, you come on, move up. I'll take you too, right there. Yes, ma'am, you in black. Gray. 4. Yep, that's you. Okay. Pick a number between 1 and 10. 5. Huh? 7. What? Yeah. You, come on. And you. And I need a volunteer from either administration or a teacher, somebody, anybody. We're burning daylight. And sir, in the blue, I saw you, so come on up too.
You did.
Okay, I need you and you to follow me. Okay, need you to form up right here, straight line. Put your arms out to your sides, and I need about that much space in between you. Face on out, there you go. Take 1 step forward. 1 step forward. All right, dress to your right. That's your acting corporal down there, dress to your right. Okay, good job. All right, gentlemen, I need you to put that belt on. See if you can have that. If you would hold that for just a minute. Ready? All good. Okay, let me get you dressed up. What's your name?
John.
John? Sergeant John. You're going to be our acting sergeant, okay? So, put you up here. Here. And you're going to just make believe that you have a safety belt, okay? Alright, so, I need you to position right here on the right flank, face this way. And I need you right here and face this way. Ready? We're going to have some contact here in a little bit, so pay attention. Okay? All right, I'm going to tell you what this is. First of all, this is the 1860 model light cavalry saber. at a 36-inch blade. It's a curvature, unlike a sword. It's got a curve. That curve is kind of gruesome, but that curve is designed so if I'm on a horse and I come up and I run somebody through and I run by them, it helps that sword get pulled out of their body.
Or saber, I'm sorry.
So this is different than a saber. Okay, we're gonna do a saber drill. This is basic drill, okay? Like you just enlisted in the cavalry. Just enlisted, they would not give you one of these nice fancy sabers because you'd cut your buddy, cut yourself, stab yourself in the foot. So they'd give you wooden sabers to practice with. Right? In the infantry, they'd give you wooden muskets like these at the racks over here. So, first of all, saber drill. The saber was carried in a scabbard on your belt, right here on your left side. So, pretend like you've got your saber on your left side. There you go. Perfect, perfect, perfect. As monkey see, monkey do, just like the army. On the command of draw saber, draw, you would reach around, pull the saber out just a little bit, and then draw your saber. Slowly come out, and then go to your shoulder. This is carry saber. Right? The saber's straight up and down. It's not like this, because if it was like this, and I backed up to this guy, it'd poke him in the eye. Order arms or order sabers, you're just going to come, tip's going to come down like this. Your arms extended. Carry saber, you're going to go back to the shoulder. Present saber, you're going to come like this. Carry saber, back to the shoulder. Parade rest. You're going to put the tip down. You're going to step back with your right foot. Like this. Attention. Carry saber. Return saber. You're going to come back to present arm. Place the blade and then turn the saber. Perfect. Good job. Now you ready for some contact? Okay. Draw. Sabers. Okay, the basic defense on the ground, not on the horse, but on the ground, you've got 5 basic defenses. Okay? And they're by the numbers. Number 1 is almost like you're in position where your saber's in the scabbard. So 1 is your left side of your body. This protects somebody from coming down on your left lower. Number 1. Number 2, you're going to come around to your right side. That's protecting from coming down at your right lower. 3. This is a little difficult, but you're just going to pivot up like this. And that's protecting your right upper. Here. 4. Your left upper. Protecting here. 5 is another pivot. 5 is protecting your head, so you're going to come up like this. See how that pivot worked? The blade almost didn't move. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gary Sabers. at your shoulder. Not as a, now you're ready for some contact. Okay, you can do it about face my leader. How's this guy? Y'all know him? Okay, step forward, one step forward. All right, I want you to go through the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not bad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step back. Good job. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. Try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. Step back. What's your name? David. You ready, David? Get that hand out of your pocket. Balance. Unguard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. Step up to the tail. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3,
Oh wait, we were supposed to.
4, 5. Good job. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step up, Trooper Andrew. Ready for this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. Give them a round of applause. They did pretty good. All right, Sergeant, about face. Give me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, these are real, okay? Don't do like, I try not to touch it. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. 5. Go again. 4 and 5 are like this. If you do like this. 1, 2, blade out. 3, 4, 5. Ow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. I got you. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2,
Oh, no.
3, 4.
Why am I forgetting all this? When it's real, it's different.
1,
1,
2,
2,
3,
3, 4, and then 5.
1,
1,
2.
2,
Don't be scared. 3,
3,
4.
4. No,
Up,
it's this
four.
way.
There you go.
4,
5.
and then 5.
1,
1,
2,
2,
3,
3.
4,
No, 4,
and 5.
5. I never did get it right.
Good job. Let's give your admin and your teachers a round of applause. All right. Attention. Gary Sabers. Present Sabers. Gary Sabers. Parade rest. Attention. Gary Sabers. Return. Sabers. Good job. Very well done. Very well done. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, if you could collect a wooden saber, you could just drop yours over here on the thing. Do I have any questions?
Highly trained, formidable group.
I covered it that well. I don't have any questions. Do I have any questions from my saber?
Do you have to hold it with the right hand or use your left hand?
That's a good question. His question was, do you have to hold it with your right hand? Well, in the Army, in the 1861 Confederate and Federal Army, you had to be right-handed. You couldn't use your left hand. So you had to learn how to carry a musket with your right hand. You had to learn to shoot with your right hand, and then saber with your right hand. That answer your question? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How about how old would soldiers have been during the Civil War?
That's a good question too. The average age was about 19 to 20, but a lot of young people lied about their age. A lot of 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds. They didn't want to lie because it was such a sin. So sometimes they would take a piece of paper and they would write 18 on it. You were supposed to be 18 years old. They would put it in their shoe, and when they went to enlist, the guy would say, "Are you sure you're 18?" And they would say, "I'm standing on it. I'm 18." So, that answer that question? Any other questions? Any questions about equipment? Yes.
I was just wondering why you have the pouch on the
This pouch right here? Okay. That is actually for pistol ammunition. And then earlier you saw me carrying a cartridge box on my
Yes.
front that was for carbine. So it's two separate things. And then this is called a cap box. One more question? Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
What's on your chest?
Where? Right here?
I think it was the cartridge box.
Oh, the cartridge box? Yeah, I'll show you. So this is a combination of a carbine sling and with a cartridge box. So if I was on a horse, again, I've got 3 different weapons. But if I'm on a horse, I've got to have everything secured to me. So as you see, I can have my hands free to have the reins and have control. My sabers are attached to me, my revolvers are attached to me, and my carbine with carbine ammunition is attached to me. Does that answer that question? Okay. All right. Thank you, and I'm going to introduce David Young. So David, come on up. Y'all can fall out.
Well, I'm David Young. I'm going to show you basically what your infantry went through, what your infantry wore, and what they carried with them. Now, we went as light as we could. Of course, with the cavalry, they was mounted on horses. They could carry all that extra ammunition and extra weapons. We didn't. I don't know how I'm gonna go about doing this and it being way over here. Y'all want to come? Can they come over and look? Is there a way? Or I can just go through where you're at and I'll show you
Why
right
don't you
quick.
pick a few like Captain Reno did?
Well, I was going to get one volunteer, probably the guy in the red shirt, since he held his hand up while going and didn't get picked. Yeah, that'll work. I need a model. I'm gonna go very quickly. As you notice, in different colors. The gray wool, basically, it's gonna be early war. As the war went on, wool was hard to get. They started mixing cotton with it, and that's when we started seeing the, it's a different blend of cotton and wool together. I cannot, my mind went blank as far as what the name of it is. And as the war went on even further, we got down to going with more of a cotton, and being white, they would take rusty nails, red Georgia clay, and boil it and boil the clothes in it. And and that's what you come up with a butternut color. These are just the pants. I was just showing you different versions. Also, used a lot of captured Union blue. You didn't really want the jackets, but the pants, you know, they used as often as they could. Here's a gray jacket here. We'll try that on, see if I can fit you. I'm not sure. I think it will. Every soldier need to button it up. If you're in camp, you got to have at least the top button. Even when you're on duty, you got to have them all. If you're in camp, you at least got to have his top button. And you didn't walk around without a jacket unless you had a vest or a battle shirt. A battle shirt was, it had pockets and all made into it. It was just like a coat, but it was just a shirt. You had to carry. You have a canteen. This is two of the versions. This is a wooden canteen. Early in the war, they had wooden canteens. For the most part, they weren't very durable. A lot of them were swapped off to get you a good Yankee canteen. Bullseye metal canteen. Once we put that over your shoulder, over this shoulder. Yeah, you're right. Just like that. Which I got you backwards. I'm sorry. Take it back off. I am sorry. You need a button up at top. Cook button. You need a hat. What kind of hat? This one. Now this one is actually, it's just at home hat. This is what you think of when you think of the War Between the States. You think of the forage cap or the khakis. These were alright for parades, but they don't keep the rain off your head. They don't keep the sun off your neck. So most of the guys would ride home, send me my hat, and that's what they would take. And there's several different versions here of them. All kind of had those slouch hats. This looks kind of strange, but this is one of the best hats I ever made. Because it gets raining, you flip that down in the front to keep the rain off of you. You can swap flies with it. You can get your rations with it. You can get water in it. You do anything you want to it. You can throw it on the ground, pick it up, put it back on your head. It ain't gonna hurt it. This is your cartridge box. As Jeff had his around his waist, this one goes over your shoulder. This is what you carry your cartridges in for the rifle. This will be your waist belt and your bayonet and your cap pouches on it. Somebody put it back together wrong. It goes over. This is a Georgia frame buckle. That's what they call it. It's got two teeth in it. It just digs in wherever you put it. It's called a Georgia frame, but it didn't mean it's from Georgia. It was all over. Alright, now you do your haversack. You carry all your stuff inside your haversack. Biggest thing is you don't want to carry nothing. The more you carry, if you carry it, you've got to carry it. This is a tarred haversack. This is just a plain canvas haversack, of course. This right here gets wet and everything inside of it gets wet. These have been done with linseed oil and black paint and tarred so that they'll be waterproof. And it also goes over this side. And of course, is your canteen. As far as weapons, it's going to be carrying an Enfield. This is a 1853 British Enfield, 58 caliber. It's accurate up to 600 yards. You can hit a man in the chest 600 yards away. It's got a killing range of over 1,000 yards. Over there. Now, a lot of times you'll see people carrying these in pictures. The knives, you want to go. These are big D guards. That's about 4 pounds of weight you've got to carry. So you don't carry it long. You think it does look good. A lot of them would even carry the smaller little knife, but that's still weight. If you do a 10-mile march, you will throw away everything you ain't got to have. You will decide whether you need a spoon or a fork, and you'll keep one of them. But take your bayonet. Yeah. Got a lot of Yankee blood on it. He's carrying basically 40 pounds of stuff on him, and that is minimum. That's not carrying a bedroll. It's not carrying a gun blanket like you see laying here on the ground. If can we fire? Can we fire a musket? Huh? You hold it.
You gonna leave it?
Oh, you hold it. Let's see if I've got some. Alright. Yeah. This cap box is right here. Your cap box is where you carry your caps in. What you do when you get ready to fire this weapon begins with, let me do it. It's what you call loading 9 times. He would reach into his, on the command, load. Prepare to load, you bring your weapon to your right foot. Like this. This comes from the old Gillum's book. Then you would handle cartridge. You reach into your cartridge box, pull out a round, you handle cartridge, you bring it to your teeth. Then the command is tear cartridge. Bring it to the top. Next command is charge cartridge. You pour the powder down the barrel. I don't know who rolled these rounds, but they didn't do a very good job. Come to here, you prime, you reach into your cap box, pull out a cap. It looks like a little top hat made out of brass. It's got a filament of mercury inside of it. Put that on, throw your old cap off, put that cap on, you ready, you come to back to the shoulder, man knows you're ready to fire. Then the command is ready. Pull hammer back, aim. If it goes off, it's going to be loud. Fire. Then it's recover, arms. Order, arms. That didn't sound that loud that time. If you got 1,000 men firing at once, it is loud. And I always wondered when you shooting downfield, you can aim if you want to the first time. By the second shot, you ain't going to see them no more. Because the powder, the field's going to be just full of powder, smoke, you won't see nothing in front of you. Do y'all want to drill quick like he did? We got time? Well, come get your weapon. These muskets are just like the ones that was issued during the war. When you enlisted, you didn't go and get a weapon. They didn't have them. And if your company did have them a lot of times, you didn't get to stay with them, or you didn't get to take them with you. Get in a line, just like y'all did a while ago. We'll go through a quick manual arms on these. Now, Banks County, I had people who left Banks County at 24th Georgia. Had a great granddaddy's brother fought with 24th out of Banks County, and they come to Athens. That's where I'm from. And the Athens people fed them in front of the Franklin House down there before they got on a train to go to Virginia. Got any more?
I had to do this anyway.
Something like that. Y'all almost already there. You come on out here with me. You got to do it with the real thing. All right. Put your weapon down here. You fall in. This is attention. It should be beside your right foot. With the barrel to the rear. All right. First command is shoulder, arms. Other side. There you go. Shoulder, arms, you bring your rifle up and you put your fingers around the trigger guard. One of the next commands is right shoulder shift, and you just bring your weapon up just like this. It lays on your shoulder, and then you grab the bottom, just like the normal. Come on up. Grab the bottom of that hand. Keep it sort of pulled into you, so the man behind you don't get hit. You go back, shoulder, arms, you drop it right back down just like it was. All right, the next command will be support arms. You bring the weapon in front of you, you turn it, you bring it to this shoulder with your hand on the butt of the rifle. The reason you do these different maneuvers is when you're marching along, you don't want to stay at the same way of holding the rifle. Another command would be, well, shoulder, arm, bring it back. Support arms, you bring it up in front of you and bring it up just like this in front of you. Another rest right there on your shoulder. And then give you the command rest, you can grab a hold of the butt of the rifle and you get your red belt and stuff like that, help hold on to it. Like I said, this is just another way of walking or marching where you won't get fatigued. Right. Shoulder, arms, bring back. Order, arms, you have to slide down to the ground, just like that. Now another thing is, cavalry thinks they got advantage over us, but there's a defense against cavalry. It's called guard against cavalry. When you do that, you go into your fours, like you four right here, and you four, you have to do it with 5. Alright, what I want you to do is put your left foot here next to my left foot. Each one of you go into a fours. You get like this, alright, then you have another one in front of you and another one behind you. You're making a square. You do this, you got to do this. Put your foot. Alright, you come on here. No, right here in front of you. Y'all would turn out. There you go. No, you facing this way. Y'all turn that way. Now you come behind me. You face back that way. Y'all put your left foot back towards each other. Alright, if the cavalry does come charging through you, you go to guard against cavalry. You bring your weapon up like this, and you want it like it be head high, because what you want to do is get that cavalryman off when he comes by you. When he tries to hit you that saber, he's not coming, because you have loaded weapons. More than likely, he is not going to come. Cavalry to me is more of a shock and awe type thing, but they help us when we get overrun. We call on them, and they come in on the flanks, and they just cause havoc. If they do come through, you just charge out and up. You step out and up when they come by into them with your bayonet. So you have a bayonet on the end of it. Alright, fall back in. Just like it was, I'm sorry. I know there's a lot here to see and to talk about, but I know our time's running close. Does anybody have any questions about the infantry? Or anything about Banks County? Or not Banks County, but anything about Georgia in particular? No questions?
attention. I got one more little quick thing to talk about, and that's going to be why am I dressed like I am. Well, first of all, there were over 400 women that served in the Civil War. They went in dressed as men. They cut their hair, they put mustaches on, they bound their bodies, and they dressed as men, fought with men. Now, there were more than 400, but we know for sure that there were at least 400 that were designated. But now, I'm not one of those. My role is a vivandière. A vivandière is a French word for woman in the military, and also it became known in America as daughter of the regiment. This was a woman who was adopted by the regiment. She traveled with the regiment. She lived with the regiment, and her function was several different things. She would function as a nurse. She would function as a go-between, but most of the time she was there to do a particular job. It was not unheard of. Now, we don't know a lot about how many there were because the military did not sanction this particular position, but there were several women. They were very strong, they were very courageous, and they saved a lot of lives. They carried a haversack. You've seen the haversack. They carried medicine, food. They could carry tobacco. They could carry anything with them. But most often they were seen when a soldier fell on the field. They could get to them pretty quickly, help take care of them, get them off the field. Remember, we didn't have hospitals. You put your wounded in a wagon and you drove them across a bumpy road or a bumpy field that had been plowed up by the army, and it was a rough ride. So anything that these women could do to help out these soldiers when they fell sometimes would save their life. If you want to follow me, I'm going to show you something real quick, and then we're going to go. Right over here, you can see a few things. This was one of the medicines. I know what it looks like. Not what it looks like, but it was then what it looks like. This was necessary. It was very necessary, and it went with the army wherever they went. So, but it still does too. This is a lantern. Sometimes when the vivandière would have to go out at night, check her wounded soldiers or her patients, she would carry this. This is one of the lanterns that we use even today. The haversack, of course. Oh, here's another one. She also would carry these. She could carry her food, an apple or some kind of food to give to the troops. Bandages. This is not the size of a bandage. Remember, we didn't have bandages back then like you can go to CVS and buy. These were made from sheets, pieces of cloth, petticoats from under the women's skirts, anything that you could find. These things were used over and over and over again. They were washed, so a lot of times they were bloody even when they went on a newly wounded soldier. Lint was used. This right here. Now this is not really lint, but this was used to pack wounds on the battlefield. It actually was made by scraping material until you got enough of this and you packed it in the wounds, and hopefully that helped some of them survive. And this, probably one of the most dear things to a soldier other than his gun and his horse. This is paper. Paper? What are you talking about, paper? So many of our soldiers couldn't write. You're real fortunate. School was not mandatory then, it was a luxury. And if you could write, that was great, because your buddy next to you might not be able to. And if he was going out to battle, he might just want to write that last letter home. So the vivandière could write the letter for him and send it home. Sometimes it took 2-3 months for letters to get there, but letters were treasured by the soldiers. They kept them inside their jacket next to their heart. So you talked about the different canteens. This one is the wooden one. She would carry that. If I wanted to be in a different, now I'm dressed in gray. Who wore gray? Who wore gray? Who wore gray? The South wore gray. But if I wanted to do the Federals, I could get me a hat like this, a kepi, and wear it. And I could also steal me a blue jacket. So a lot of things had to be done. War's not pretty, it's not glorious, not glamorous. The Civil War was probably one of the most devastating to the men and women, to the citizenry, to the army. More people were killed in that particular war than any other, as far as the population and the ratio. But it was one of the most pivotal times in our nation's heritage. So remember that when you're thinking about who you are, where you come from, the area you live in, what you believe. It all comes down to your heritage. Thanks very much for inviting us. We enjoyed it. Hope you learned something.
Guys, that is it for Heritage Day. On behalf of Banks County Middle School, I'd like to thank Miss Atha Dalton and I'm sorry, your names will escape me. Mike Brown, Mr. Jeff Reno, Mr. Dave Young. Thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you, students, for being on your best behavior today. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've enjoyed it. Take next week off. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Be safe. We'll see you later.